here today with Susan Hayes, the Positive Economist, and we're just going to take a look at the outlook for Ireland, the things that are good about it, the things that may not be so good about it, and to get an up-to-date view on that from the woman herself. Susan?
Right, what's good about it? Well, I mean, the obvious one is the exports. Exports are doing very well, and even within my own company, I must say exports have picked up, and export sales, I think, is where a lot of companies are focusing. I suppose one good thing that has come about over the last couple of years is that companies are now focusing outside of Ireland, which they might not necessarily have had to do in the past. Only 3.5% of service companies actually export at all, and I do hear, particularly within the SME community, firm looking towards doing so. As I've often been heard quoting before, there are a lot of supports out there for companies who do want to export. I mean, we have the obvious ones like the Irish Export Association, and of course then Enterprise Boards, Enterprise Ireland, etc. But there's also the one that has been extremely helpful to me was Enterprise Europe Network, that is coordinated through the Chambers of Commerce.
Wow.
They actually, for example, when I went to Malta in January, they engaged with their partners in Malta and created a full itinerary of 20 meetings for me out there without me lifting the phone.
That's just amazing.
So
it was through the Chambers of Commerce. There is a Europe-wide network
funded by the Commission
that you were able to tap into.
Yeah.
That put you in touch with all these different. What kind of people did you meet in Malta?
The CEO of the Irish Stock Exchange, I met with. I met with software companies. I met with if I were to talk in equivalent terms, the Institute of Bankers will say. There's also a couple of agencies specifically looking after the financial industries, some fund administrators. I'm just trying to the university, the economics department of the university, the national paper. Malta's a small place. I met them all, and they were all done for me. I met the Irish ambassador, and then I went back for the month of May and delivered training to.
And so what you'll export now is actually training.
Yep, absolutely. So, and from there, like we'll build on that again. I'm going back again now in November. I'm going back actually to meet the regulator to look at how Ireland does things. One of the unions actually specifically requested to meet me to see how social partnership had worked or had not worked in Ireland. Various different things, but again, it all stems from the fact that it began there. Had I had to go out to that country and literally land and say, well, what now? It would have been far more difficult. That is a European-wide network, and there's huge amounts of European funding that is available out there for those types of things, as long as you know how to tap into it. And we have a lot of agency offices in Dublin that help us do that.
Good to hear that Susan is out there hustling up a stock.
Oh yeah.
But in terms of the rest of the country, where do you think we're all headed?
Right. FDI, or foreign direct investment, is still very strong. The only thing about that is the fact that you are dealing with, double digits numbers of jobs, and we need, 5 digits worth of jobs. So it is still strong. We are improving our competitiveness. I mean, the fact that there's any question over our corporation tax, I think, is absolutely ridiculous. Shouldn't be there at all. We took the bailout when we were kind of told to take the bailout. In fact, when you look at us in comparison to Greece, and that's just one example, we're far more responsive to the measures that have been imposed on us. But when you look at Portugal had a trade deficit when it had full employment in 1999. We didn't, and that's a trade surplus, never mind a balance of payments surplus as well, as which we had with the Celtic Tiger. So the fact that that's in the cards at all, I think maybe hurting FDI, but still I think that it's fairly strong. One thing that may surprise people though is the amount of companies opening versus closing. I've been watching this a lot over the last while, and we're looking at an average of 4 or 5 companies open for every one that closes, or businesses and companies open for every one that closes.
Are the numbers equivalent though? Is it resulting in 100 jobs created for 100 jobs lost, or are you just looking at actual company formations?
I'm looking at actual company formations, and that's obviously the other thing is that you would have to look at. Now again, we're looking at a number of these would be SMEs, it would be individual companies. I mean, if a multinational ups and goes, that wouldn't be counted. That isn't a company closing. So you're primarily dealing with the SME sector. Of course, then that company closing may have outstanding bills that it may not pay, or suppliers that it's letting down, etc. But overall, I suppose the other thing as well that stands out to me about that number is we both know what it's like to set up a company and then say, okay, now there's no social welfare if this goes wrong. So 4 or 5 people for every one person that's closing, are companies, enterprises versus those closing, that are taking that risk, and that obviously feel that it's worth their while to do so. And along the whole question of entrepreneurship as well, I mean, there's a huge amount of incubation centres out there. Actually, I've been fortunate to be accepted onto the Innovation Enterprise Programme. Yeah, it's great actually, I must say it's very good. It's 3 days a month between DKIT and DCU, where we sit down and we really step off the treadmill, look at our businesses, see how we can augment them, etc. And there has been, like, the Chambers of Commerce, as I mentioned, the County Enterprise Boards, all of those, but there's a lot more talk about entrepreneurship in Ireland, and I think those three things, that is where you go down to absolute basics. That's where you're talking about me talking to you, customer, supplier. That's where it's brass tacks, and that's where it's coming from.
Do you think, you mentioned earlier about how we're exporting so much, do you think it's possible to run a high balance of trade because our exporters are doing quite well, but to have this stubbornly high unemployment because the export jobs aren't necessarily resulting, or the export work isn't necessarily resulting in job creation due to computerization or other processes, or just the fact that they've gotten very lean, they don't need more people?
In some cases, that's what it is. It's technology, but also the other thing as well is that, you know, we just say, for example, I went out to Malta and I brought home several €1,000s worth of sales. But the thing was, I had to go out to Malta to deliver them. So therefore, I was staying in a hotel, I was buying their food, and that's the thing is that while export sales are coming in, my own personal consumption was then in Malta and not in Ireland during that time frame. And that's what you'll see quite a lot. So let's say, for example, we have CRH, an Irish company, and it's obviously exporting a significant amount, but let's say it's building a road in America. Well, then who can it employ with the people there? So export sales will account for between a fifth and a quarter of GDP, but the problem is it's so different to indigenous both consumption and indigenous companies, because that's where all of the money stays in the one place and can move through the multiplier effect. And that's the big difference. Exports are great, and I love them, and they're great, and I'm very happy to say that I'm bringing it home. But part of the cause and effect, I suppose, is the fact that some of that money has to go directly back to that country where you're originally selling in the first place.
There you have it. Susan Hayes, Positive Economist.